Donald Trump just had the unpleasant opportunity to hear from his least favorite former Republican in Liz Cheney, and he responded exactly as you'd expect, with a total meltdown. Because when Cheney recently sat on a panel, not only was she asked by the parent of one of the police officers who was there on January 6th, but she also talked about the way that we need to respond to Trump, not just his past attacks on our democracy, but this current administration, and made some very important critiques of the media that I think we all need to hear. And that, of course, sent Donald Trump into a tailspin. And we are going to get into all of that, including Trump's meltdown. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really means the world to me. Now, before we get into Trump's meltdown over Cheney, I want to check out her responding to the parent of a January 6th police officer. This clip right here.
A question from a member of this audience, Bob McAllister. Ms. Cheney, my son was one of the 140 Metro police officers injured during the Jan 6 insurrection. Thank you for your comments in the book concerning their valor. My question is, what is your viewpoint on former President Trump's pledge to pardon any insurrectionists if elected?
Well, first of all, Mr. McAllister, thank you so much, and thank you so much to your son. You know, if you watch what happened on the west front of the Capitol that day, you know, although thousands of people had managed to get into the Capitol, the police officers who prevented thousands more from coming in, they saved our lives, and they saved our democracy, and it you know, we would not have been able to get through what we did without them, and. On the night of the 6th, after we had come back into session, I walked into Statuary Hall and then into the rotunda, and I wanted to see the damage that had been done. And when I walked into Statuary Hall, I was stunned, first into the rotunda, because there were police officers in tactical gear and SWAT team, members of law enforcement, and they were, many of them, they were sitting on the ground and they were leaning up against the statues that ring the rotunda in Statuary Hall, and they'd fought all day. And one of them said to me, as I was thanking them for what they had done, one of them said to me, "I fought in Iraq, and I have never in my life encountered the kind of bloody sort of desire to tear us limb from limb that I faced in this mob today." And so the notion that, first of all, Donald Trump and Elise Stefanik and Mike Johnson claim to be members of the party that believes in law enforcement is complete bullshit. And I think everybody needs to remember what Donald Trump watched happen that day, what Republicans who excuse that attack are excusing that day, the absolute assault on law enforcement. That's not a party that is the party of law enforcement. And for Donald Trump now to say things like it was a day of love, which he does, and to suggest that he's going to pardon the people that attacked our Capitol and assaulted law enforcement, I mean, that tells you who he is. It tells you who he is, and that's not the person that we can have leading the country. It's not somebody that anybody or any of our children should ever be looking up to, and I think everybody ought to remember what he's advocating, and again, not just him. And I'm sorry for using the phrase I did, but I can't think of a better way to describe it. This is a party that's abandoned law enforcement.
Now, we know Donald Trump hates accountability. It is his least favorite thing in the world. And that's why Liz Cheney, who has always spoken out so powerfully against him, I think gets under his skin the most, because she's such a clear example of how far from the mainstream Donald Trump has broken, and that he is not a Republican, but he is just a wannabe authoritarian, and maybe soon to be on January 20th, an authoritarian, and that his attacks on our democracy transcend party lines, or at least they should. They certainly don't for Republicans and their cult that will always be loyal to Donald Trump. But Liz Cheney's critique of him is what gets Donald Trump so angry. And her past condemnation of Donald Trump and her past public humiliation of him, really is the only thing that we can call it, and a much-deserved public humiliation, is why he holds such a grudge. Donald Trump is always caught up in the past, and that's why he is responding to Liz Cheney again, writing this right here. President-elect Trump predicted there's trouble in sight for former Representative Liz Cheney after a recent report from House Republicans recommended a criminal investigation into the ex-lawmaker over her role in the House panel investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Liz Cheney could be in a lot of trouble based on the evidence obtained by the subcommittee, which states the numerous federal laws were broken by Liz Cheney, and these violations should be investigated by the FBI. Trump wrote in an early Wednesday morning post on Truth Social. We know that Donald Trump is always and completely caught up in the past. He is always focused on his grudges. He always wants revenge. He always wants retribution. And it's something that we need to focus on throughout the entirety of his administration, because Democrats certainly do need to rework our messaging to pick up and respond to everything that Trump does isn't effective unless we make a really connected message to why he is doing what he is. Like, we've been talking about Donald Trump's ridiculous post about wanting to purchase or invade Canada or Greenland or steal the Panama Canal, whatever he's posting about. Now, we could just respond to Trump being ridiculous, or we could point out that Donald Trump is promising peace and prosperity, but he's creating conflict with other countries. That he said that he was going to lower the cost of groceries and make energy cheaper than ever, but his focus seems to be on posting. That's it. Making memes. Like, the discongruency of what Donald Trump says versus what he does and yaps about is incredibly clear. And we have to make that argument, which is exactly what Liz Cheney was talking about in her critique of the media right here.
Because I think that there was a tendency after January 6th and when he first began speaking publicly again, there was a tendency in the news media in some cases to say, we're not going to cover it. That what he is saying is so dangerous and outrageous, and frankly, he was peddling lies that, Fox News had to ultimately pay $787 million for their role in helping to spread those lies. And so there was a decision in a lot of, I think, media outlets not to cover him. And I understand that. But my view is now he must be covered. Every word he says has to be covered. But he can never be covered without talking about what he did. I see the news media now sliding back into, we're all products of all of our experiences up till now. And sometimes the news media now slides into covering this like, this is a normal campaign. Here's the Republican, and here are his policies. Here's the Democrat, and here are his policies. And I don't think that will be fulfilling the responsibility of the news media. I think that the American people, if only those people who watch Newsmax and OAN know what Donald Trump is saying at each of his rallies, and if there are not decisions made to make sure the American people have at every moment sort of the full understanding of the danger that he poses, then we all, I think, run the risk that voters will sort of slide into, well, I've just got to make a decision the way I usually do. And I think for the next 8 months, the news media has to really be sure that the coverage isn't tainted or tilted in terms of, what do we think the certain segments of voters want to hear, but it really has to be, look, this is who this person is, it's what he did, and it matters that people remember that and they know it when they're going in to vote.
We obviously need to follow what Trump does. Anyone who says that we can't normalize him is spot on, but covering his presidency, because unfortunately he is going to be president again, isn't normalizing him. That's doing our job of holding him accountable. But to follow every ridiculous action of Donald Trump isn't helpful in covering him. That's kind of just doing what he wants. Unless, like I said, we connect it to the broader critique of his failures and how he's already turning his back on not just his promises, which were all lies, of course, but what MAGA's ideology is supposed to be about. He's kind of falling in line with Elon's new MAGA globalist view of the world when he has always been pushing these nativist anti-immigration critiques of an America First movement that doesn't seem very America First when it interferes with Elon's pockets. That's what Donald Trump is about. We know he's not about us. We know he's not about you or me, but we have to make it clear to everyone else. And speaking of Liz Cheney, another thing has happened with her recently that is certainly going to get Donald Trump upset, and I want to check that out right here. President Biden is giving the second highest civilian award to the leaders of the January 6th Congressional Committee. President Joe Biden is bestowing the second highest civilian medal on Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson, leaders of the congressional investigation into the Capitol riot, who Donald Trump has said should be jailed for their roles in the inquiry. Biden will award the Presidential Citizens Medal to 20 people in a ceremony Thursday at the White House, including Americans who fought for marriage equality, a pioneer in treating wounded soldiers, and two of the president's longtime friends, former Senators Ted Kaufman and Chris Dodd. A medal for the action that Donald Trump ridiculously thinks Liz Cheney should be jailed for is definitely going to drive him a little bit cuckoo. And I'm going to enjoy pointing out how that madness that envelops Donald Trump distracts him from the promises that he made but will never keep. Because that's the message that we need to deliver, and that's what we're going to be talking about every single day on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around at the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.